Okay, since it's raining today, we're going to do an instructional video on how to clean the carburetor and get an old little tractor running. When they sit for a while, you'll find pieces of corn and stuff in them where the rats have been into them. We found a couple wasps' nests in them as well. I went ahead and took the hood off to make it easier to get to. You don't have to, but it's just easier to get into it with the hood off. Always make sure you close your choke before you get into the bolts and everything, because you will drop them and they'll go down into your carburetor and into your intake manifold, and then they're into your engine, and before you know it, you're tearing your engine apart. So we're going to tear this thing apart and see if we can't get it running. What I'm doing now is taking the breather housing off. Just be careful when you take it apart. If you want to reuse your gaskets and stuff, I like to try to reuse them as much as I can. I'll replace them if they're cracked or dry rotted, but I try to reuse them the best I can, because it's all about saving money. That's why you're doing it yourself. Because if you was taking it to a shop, you wouldn't be saving money. I know, because I ran a shop for several years. Get your breather hose loose. There's your gasket. And I just set my parts. When I do something, I just set my parts to the side. I've done it so long that I pretty well know where everything goes, but I would get a cup or something to keep all your parts in. Now I'm going to remove the choke cable to get it out of the way. A lot of times you can take a marker and mark on it so that you know how it goes back together, but in this case it's got a mark on it where it's been there for so long that I don't have to put a mark on it. If it was a newer model, you would put a mark on it to show exactly where it goes back. On these style here, the carburetor mounts weird from the bottom up. There's a jet on the inside right here. What you're going to do is you're going to take these 4 bolts out, remove this top plate, and the float will come out with the top plate. And then you'll have your sediment bowl that will be mounted to your intake manifold. Okay, I've got my bolts removed. I'm going to go ahead and pop this loose. Like I said, be real careful when you take it loose so that you don't damage your gasket. This gasket here, it looks like it's got a little cut on it, but that's not a problem. The main thing is the seal around here and around those holes there. That way it seals up good. This is your float. You always want to check your float to see if it's got liquid in it. If it does, it's bad. These brass ones were bad about getting little pinholes in them, and they will leak. Let me get a pair of pliers. Give me a pair of pliers. It's a little small. If your pin gets stuck, you can use a pair of side cutters, dikes, or whatever you want to call it, and it'll pull out just like that. The way I check it is you pick it up and you can shake it. And if you shake it, you can hear if there's liquid in it. This one's obviously not got liquid in it. There's no sound or anything at all, so it's still good. Pull your needle out. Check your needle tip. Make sure it's not oblonged or bent or broken off or anything. This one's got a little bit of a bend to it, but since we're doing this one on a budget, we're going to let that one slide. We will check it to see if it's sealing before we finish the job. I like to keep everything kind of together when it comes to carb parts, because they're hard to come by unless you buy a complete kit, and on some of these the kits are ridiculous. Okay, right here on your front, this little piece here called your fuel pump. The majority of them have the 3-screw fuel pump. A lot of them have 4-screw fuel pump. If you go to your lawnmower shop to buy your parts, A lot of times the people ask you, is it a 3-screw or a 4-screw? That's how you tell what they're talking about. Is it'll have 3 screws or it'll have 4 screws. Very simple way to be able to differentiate the two. Go ahead and pop them off. Okay, we went ahead and removed the 3 screws that hold the front of the fuel pump on. When you take it loose, just be sure to be careful with it. This here has a diaphragm, which is a flexible piece of gasket material, and then it has a gasket. Always remember that the gasket goes against metal, the diaphragm goes against plastic. So if you've got plastic, the flexible piece will always go against the plastic. Always. That's not bad. It's still good and soft. So I'm going to reuse that. I'm not going to remove it all the way to show you, because I don't want to have to replace that, because I don't have one here on hand. So that one's still good. And you pop that off. You can see there's been water right here. Inside there, that's water deposits. And you can see it on here, where it's got water on it. I'm not going to pull that off because there's springs behind it, and I don't want to tear it. It's still good. It's not damaged at all. All you have to do is make sure that you get it clean, get all the water deposits out of it, and it'll go right back together. As long as it seals and doesn't leak, you're good to go. Okay, we went ahead and got the fuel pump put back together. We're going to go in and pull our jet out. I've already loosened this bolt up. All this is a plug. It's got a little O-ring on it. Nothing special there. But down inside of here, there is a jet. It takes a cabinet screwdriver. You can buy the Briggs and Stratton ones. They fit right in, and it's the size that it's made for. So, may have to get a secondary screwdriver and push it out. And you'll have your jet. A lot of times they'll be stopped up straight up the middle, where this one sits down in the bottom of the bowl all the time. It's bad about stopping up. This one seems pretty clear. We'll blow some brake cleaner through it. And pretty much that carburetor there is pretty well clean. You've got a few little venturies right here on the top. As long as they're good and clean through there, and that main jet's clean, and your fuel pump is working properly, these carburetors here are bulletproof. Really well made. We got the carburetor back together. Everything's good and clean. We left the fuel line unhooked. What we're going to do is we're going to replace the fuel filter. So what you always want to do when you're going to replace the fuel filter is, when you disconnect it to drain the tank, disconnect it on the opposite side from the tank. That way all the old fuel can filter through the old fuel filter before you put the new one on. That one's full of water. Okay, we got it all drained, mostly water. The reason this one had a lot of water in it, it sits outside, but on these old mowers they had this style gas cap, and it had a glass or plastic cover right there, and about every one I've ever worked on, that's been gone. And if you don't put something over that, it will rain and water will leak by that hole and get down into your gas tank. And that's the main problem with this mower, is that part right there. It just needs to be stored inside. But other than that, they're great mowers. We'll get this filter changed and get the tank finished cleaned out, and we'll get right back with you. Okay, we got all that out. We got the old filter off. It was plumb full of nastiness. You can see some of the nastiness in it. We got all that changed. We're going to put a new filter on. I don't like the wire filters. They rust if water gets in there. I like a paper filter. It doesn't rust. It's not as... It doesn't catch the big stuff, and it stops up a lot easier, but it doesn't rust. When you go to put these on, always check them. Some of them have a flow, some of them don't, but you can see this one flows this way, and you just put it in line for the gas to flow through it. You just pop it up on there. Put your clamps back in place, and you're good to go with that. Okay, we've got fuel lines back on, fuel filter, gas caps back on. We got the fuel line hooked back up to the fuel pump. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the choke cable, and then we will try to start it. On this one here, you don't have to have the breather housing on it. I wouldn't recommend running it without it, but you can start it to make sure it runs, because it's a few extra bolts, and if it doesn't start, then you can work on it without it. Just make sure that you have your choke adjusted to where it needs to be. Make sure it opens and closes properly, and then you're good to go. Let's see if she'll start up. On this one here, the kill wires are messed up, so we have to kill it like that until I rewire all that stuff. But that's pretty much it on building this carburetor and getting this little engine running. We appreciate you watching. If this video helped you any at all, or just because you want to, hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you.